An angel. When the fortress he had built around himself crumbled, he saw her shining brightly like a star. Every look ignited his broken heart, every word felt like a tender embrace, and every time he saw her, it felt like the feather of a wing brushed his cheek. Everything she did came from a place of unconditional love, and every time she turned towards him, or he turned towards her, his injured and also guarded heart just popped open. To him she appeared like an angel, always surrounded by a soft glow, every touch an act of love initiating healing. Unfortunately, he did not believe in angels, nor that he was worthy of receiving unconditional love. In fact, he had never experienced unconditional love from others before, and just could not believe it was real. So, when the tower fell, he turned away from her, blocked her out, and walked into the dark night of the soul. Can angels cry, you might ask? Yes, they can. She saw him vanish into the darkness she had just come out of, and tears ran down her face because she could not hold his hand along the way. But because she was an angel, she did not close her heart. Instead, she opened it even more and allowed all the pain to move through, because she knew that when she felt her pain, it transformed into love. Her tears washed away the last remnants of darkness from her, a darkness that once was enlightened by a match somebody gave to her. It had been him whose light had guided her out of her dark night of the soul and kept her from falling. Now, she chose to be strong and transform even the least little bit of darkness in her so that her light could guide others out of their dark night, should they choose to come out of it again. She would be a lighthouse. On his path through the night, tears ran down his face too. Another new experience for him, as he had sworn to himself once that he would never cry again. In the presence of a violent father, his tears seemed like a dangerous weakness that invited more violence. So he shut down his heart and built a tower around it for protection. Now that his tower had fallen, he felt so vulnerable and scared. Also, all the unfelt emotions washed over him. He did not understand what was happening. Eventually, instead of obscuring his view, the tears had washed away the deceptions, pain, and misconceptions so that he could see clearer. He was still afraid, maybe even a little bit more than before, because he realized that he did not want to fall into this darkness. Navigating blindly, he put one foot in front of the other, carefully balancing himself. So, though it was rock bottom, there was ground under his feet. He found balance in his heart, which he kept open now. Then he looked up and saw a light. A spark flew over and ignited his heart. Along her path, she ignited many hearts, and seeing them open and shine ignited hers even more. Her life became bright again. She also did not walk alone anymore. Tender, loving connections grew, while one pair of wings after another was spread. She was less afraid of the darkness now. She encountered it with love, like everything else, starting with herself. That was not to say she would jump back into the darkness, but she could let it be, just like she let him be, who and where he needed to be now. Whenever she thought of him, she would just love him unconditionally. And he truly was always in her heart. Once his spark had reached her heart, she stopped freezing. She had not noticed that she had been cold before, but she surely noticed his warmth sheltering her from the cold she had not paid attention to. She also felt whole again, although she had lived her life wholeheartedly before. When her spark had ignited his heart, he felt embraced by her angel wings. The darkness transformed, and he could see his path again. He knew what he had to do. He would become the best version of himself for her. He felt his wounds, one at a time, and healed his broken heart, carrying her light in his. He became a lighthouse that helped others to find their way through the darkness. His love for himself grew every day, and so did his love for her. His love for her was so pure that he began to love her unconditionally. At first, he was afraid that she would not love him back anymore. But eventually, this did not matter. He just loved her, not for what she did or did not do, but for who she was. And he could now see her for what she was and believe in her, because he believed in himself. She felt his embrace through the distance. It kept her warm and encouraged her when life seemed difficult. It invited her to keep her heart open, and it sparked an unspeakable surge of joy in her to notice that his heart was now wide open and that he could now love himself. Would she ever hear from him again? She did not know. And though she would love to receive a note from him and keep in touch physically, it did not really matter anymore, because they both were in touch, always, both aware of the communication, both trusting in it and strengthening it. But there was something she did not know. He had started so many letters to her, and none of them felt good enough to be sent. He had written poems and serenades. He was even writing a novel inspired by her. But he just could not yet rev up the courage to contact her. How much it must have hurt her when he had turned away. He knew how much it had hurt him. Noticing her love every day and getting acquainted with this new feeling of unconditionality, his fears began to slowly melt away, though. It did not matter if she would reciprocate. What mattered was to let her know she was loved as unconditionally as she loved others, loved as much as she deserved it. He looked at the ticket in his hand. Once he had reached her hometown, he would make contact, leaving it up to her if she would even want to see him. Just being near her was enough. He spread his wings.